Hi, it's Sachi. Today we are going to stitch along running stitch, whipped running stitch, and laced running stitch. Okay, let's get started. Running stitch is just the usual flat seaming stitches, nothing unusual. You just bring up and down the needle and make stitches. It is recommended that you should make stitches evenly, making the same width of the stitches so that they look nice and neat. Next, whipped running stitch. It is also called as twisted running stitch. Let me show you how to stitch. First, you stitch running stitch, which is flat seaming as I've mentioned. This one. Okay, so then you start from the middle point of the first running stitch. Okay, bring up the needle below the first stitch and to the bottom. Okay, like this, to the bottom. Bring up. See, I catch something. Okay. Okay, so go through the running stitch. Okay, from the top of them to the bottom, like this. Okay. Okay, so whipping effect. Okay. Repeat it, creating whip-like stitches around the running stitch. Okay. So as you may have realized, you are not going to bring down the needle until you finish making these whip-like stitches. Of course, if your project requires you to start from the last stitch, which is on the very left, that is totally fine. Okay. And bring it down in the middle of the last stitch. Okay. Okay, so this is one way to create a straight line, like when you want to stitch alphabets and so on. But outline stitch can be a better option to make a real straight line, like when you want to avoid making any bumps in them, as you can see here. Okay. I'm planning to show you how to stitch outline stitch in a coming up video. Anyway, it is said that it's better for you to use cross stitch needles to make the second line, which I made with this orange thread, because the needle tips of them are less sharper than the ones for embroidery. When the needle tips are sharp, it's true that you catch the first line, I mean the running stitch, which you are supposed to just go through. But today I'm using a ribbon embroidery needle because the eyes of ribbon embroidery needle are wider than embroidery needles. Since I'm stitching with 6 strands to show you the stitches, I preferred wider eyes. Very simple, well? But still I can tell you this, if I am making a teeny tiny whipped running stitch, like for small detailed alphabets, things like that, in that case I actually prefer to stitch with outline stitch, but the basic idea is the same. I definitely use embroidery needles just because I like to make stitches meticulously. But anyways, it is easier to control needle movements, thus shapes that are made with your needle and the thread. When I use thinner, sharper needles, it is a lot easier, yeah, okay, to control it. So my usual go-to is ribbon embroidery needles for wider eyes or embroidery needles for sharper tips. It is just my personal preference, but sharing it with you. So lastly, lace running stitch. Some of you may know it as threaded running stitch. Let me show you how to stitch. Okay, so first, stitch running stitch. Okay, so let's start the second line with this yellow thread. Okay, so from the middle point of the first running stitch, okay, bring up to the bottom. Okay, make a nice half oval shape or a semicircular shape. It depends on the width of the running stitch, and go through the bottom up through to the top. Okay, like this, and continue to make the shape. Okay, like this. And bring down. So this is how you stitch lace running stitch. Okay, so I'm also going to use other materials to let you see the effect. Okay, so first, the whipped running stitch. I use this fancy thready ribbon for the second line. Okay, I used the same kind of thread when I made this case, this one. Okay, so I first stitched chain stitch with beads, and then whipped around the chain stitches with this type of thready ribbon, but in a different colors, as you can see here. Okay, so I like to use different materials, as you can see: ribbons, beads, threads, fabric, spangles, sometimes yarn, because I feel joyous, seeing their jazz, if you know what I mean. Okay, so I like to play fun. So okay, let's start stitching. starting from the middle, okay, like this. Okay, so up to bottom. I'm sorry, top to bottom. Top to bottom, like this. Okay, so let's make lace running stitch with a green ribbon. Christmas is coming and I couldn't help it. Okay, so when you stitch with ribbon, just have fun and create stitches and shapes with air and tinge of fantasy. Do not tighten up too much unless you are supposed to. Always pay attention to give the ribbon contains enough air and place so it gracefully bloom like a flower. That's how I feel. This is the image I have when I stitch with ribbons. So let's start. Okay, well. Okay. So afterwards, I just go through. Okay. Like this.
If you want to twist the ribbon, go ahead. It's going to be so beautiful. Let me try here, like this. Okay. Oops. Twists. This is really hard. Okay, so Christmassy.
So ribbon flowers and roses are also coming in the future. I will introduce stitches and tips one by one so that people who are interested to stitch along can try different techniques and materials. So starting with running stitch, I or hopefully we stitched whipped running stitch and lace running stitch today. Okay, so thank you very much for watching my very first video. I hope you liked it. Please give me a lovely thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. Also, please subscribe to my channel because I'm going to share more fancy work related videos and tips and so on. So I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you very much. Bye.